Welcome to the official start of Jefferson's third century. During our Bicentennial Year, we celebrated what got Jefferson to this point, but as 2024 becomes 2025, attention now turns to our future. And what better way to embark on that voyage than taking a look at future innovations being worked on across the enterprise? I'm Brian Hickey, a member of the university's communications team. In this first installment of the Forward-Facing series, we will peel back the curtain and take a look at some fascinating projects and plans underway within the university's College of Architecture and the Built Environment, Athletics Department, College of Rehabilitation Sciences, College of Population Health, and the Sidney Kimmel Medical College. In doing so, Thomas Jefferson University News Podcast hopes to bring you up to speed about exciting projects already underway, while sparking discussions that lead to future episodes in the same vein. With our bicentennial year behind us, it is time to build on that legacy and find uncharted path for the next generation of Jefferson's designers, thinkers, healers, and leaders. Allow us now to introduce you to John Dwyer, Chair of the College of Architecture and Built Environment's Department of Architecture. Professor Dwyer has been guiding students on a mission to end homelessness. It is a lofty goal that truly matches Jefferson's We Improve Lives ethos, and as Dwyer's team maintains, one that we are uniquely qualified to help achieve.
Ending homelessness requires us to look at homelessness not as a product of an individual's life decisions, but as a byproduct of the way we design cities. When we think about how a city is set up as a system, homelessness, for some reason, has become an inevitable byproduct. I've been very interested in looking at the systems that exist within cities and how they can be redesigned to systemically end homelessness, to position a city where homelessness never occurs. A couple of the things that we've been looking at with students over the past couple of years is, how do we define that? Can we see homelessness as a moving, flowing thing, not as a static thing? When we count the number of individuals who are homeless, that is only what's called a pit count, a point in time. Measuring how many drops are in the river at one particular point in time does not constitute all the drops that are in the river. No one really has a good sense of the inflow of people becoming homeless.
Through research, Professor Dwyer and team have pinpointed a cohort of people that have a ground-level basis of understanding the issue. He says that teachers and administrators have a solid sense of that inflow because they were in close contact with youths who face or experience homelessness.
We've started to become very aware that the inflow into homelessness is youth homelessness. And we suspect that youth homelessness is 40 times more than what's currently officially counted. In youth homelessness, there are some systems that we can look at to potentially end it. And a big one is higher ed. A lot of youth, by virtue of the way that systems are set up, do work their way out of homelessness. Some fall into chronic homelessness. It's very possible that all of us in higher ed, each of us that have students, that in a room of more than 10 students, the odds are at least one or two of them are homeless or have experienced it while they've been in higher ed. So it's a major issue for us to be able to address within higher education.
How does this fit within the architecture education framework? Professor Dwyer explains that it is about establishing an infrastructure that helps alleviate homelessness.
One of the big things that we know works, and this has been proven internationally, is housing first. The old paradigm of treating homelessness is when you treat all of these underlying conditions before you, quote unquote, give someone a home. That was the old way of thinking. What many people have now discovered is that providing housing first treats all the underlying conditions. Housing in and of itself is a form of healthcare for individuals. This is where we started to do a lot of the cost-benefit analysis to a city in terms of what would happen if we housed the homeless, that housed youth who are becoming homeless or housed youth who have housing insecurity. What are the long-term economic benefits to a city? Once you start to do the math, it's pretty astronomical. The amount of savings that each of us as individuals would experience in terms of tax revenue, the amount of a burden that is released from the healthcare system.
Many opportunities to address this issue lie within Jefferson's intersection between higher ed and healthcare, according to Professor Dwyer.
How can we start to think about ways that we might end homelessness in the city of Philadelphia, just working within the systems that we have within hospital universities? These major healthcare providers in the city that are also being taxed with the cost of serving the homelessness through systems that aren't designed to serve the homeless, while at the same time having a university entity that could allow an expanded role in providing housing to students who are experiencing housing insecurity.
Where does this effort proceed in the future?
We had a great studio last spring that included a handful of graduating students in our Master of Architecture program that pursued a broader view of homelessness. We started looking at it even in the international context. Part of what we're starting to discover is about the future of homelessness as we begin to see more and more people being displaced throughout the world. Certainly, parts of the EU are already feeling this in a big way. Countries like Italy and Germany are really trying to grapple with a major influx of refugees. And maybe not something in the US that we think of as being homeless, but it is a category of it that still relates to housing insecurity. That studio got to an understanding that was pretty close to what's called the McKinney-Vento Act, which defines homelessness as being anyone who's experiencing housing insecurity, because it's more from the lens of how we prevent it. How do we think about the future? We're seeing some of the projections that are as high as 1 out of every 8 people on Earth being forcibly removed from their homes in our lifetime over the next 50 years or so, and where those people are coming from and where they end up, what's happening with population change throughout the year.
In the fall session of Professor Dwyer's studio, students examine the impact of homelessness specifically on Philadelphia's university hospital systems and student housing.
Without trying, universities are one of the biggest ways in which we minimize homelessness in our country. There's a huge uncounted population of people that have housing insecurity leading up to age 18 and then from 18 to 25. What we're discovering is that student housing has been one of the strongest forms of temporary supportive housing. We don't call it that. We don't call it housing for the homeless. It's student housing. And it really has been one of the most strong preventative measures. The early numbers, it's about 75% of people who experience housing insecurity or homelessness as a youth end up housed after higher education. We're looking at community colleges and trying to see if we can't build some argument for states to change their policy around resisting housing. Community colleges continue to be perceived as commuter schools, but the data actually is that the student makeup in terms of their age and mobility is the same as other four-year institutions. The issue that we have is that we have community colleges which have open enrollment. If you have a GED, you're in and you get a chance at higher ed. It's the most accessible pathway to higher education for youth. Part of the reason why a lot of students fall through the cracks when they age out of foster care, it's very difficult for a homeless student in high school to succeed. So it's very difficult for them to get into college. Community colleges are this lifeline, but they don't provide housing. It's just a matter of shifting everyone's perceptions around why we're doing this, why we would want to increase student housing. A lot of it is for the whole of a city or the whole of an urban area to be able to alleviate the effects of homelessness on the city. The other side is the hospital side. Right now, the easiest shelter for someone who's homeless to get is an emergency room, because an emergency room has to take you no matter what. So the emergency rooms are used very often by the homeless community, and it costs the hospital a lot of money. It also costs us in terms of our healthcare insurance premiums. There's this mechanism of medical respite that allows an emergency room to discharge a patient directly into medical respite the minute they check into an emergency room. Patients can stay in medical respite for several weeks or even months. On the entire city of Philadelphia, there are something like 13 medical respite beds. One small nonprofit that operates it. We're trying to see if we could propose bringing this into the hospital system, even physically connecting it to an emergency room so that it is part of a broader healthcare system and it begins to scale itself up. Some cities are getting good at this, but it's still a very underutilized thing.
Are you getting any traction?
That's a hope after this studio, I think, is that we are able to assemble a package that we could start to share with the broader enterprise of Jefferson and even encourage the other university hospitals to start to jump into. A number of homeless service agencies are eager to see something like this come to fruition as well. I'm intending to get a book out within the next year about ending homelessness and as a guide for cities. That'll be step one. From there, we can start to have conversations about some of the policy shifts that could happen, admissions criteria, policies around student housing, some of the policies that might restrict medical respite from happening within a hospital. From there, we'd really love to see if we could, as architects, start to develop what this might look like, what these these buildings may actually be and where they might be, trying to understand the right geographies for them and help cities understand where these could happen, how they could be funded through the cost savings that happen within a hospital. So the biggest hope of all is that we'd be able to successfully reverse the misperceptions that are causing the criminalization of homelessness right now.
From a team committed to the pursuit of ending homelessness, let's turn our attention to another sort of team. Well, make that teams. In August 2024, Corey Goff took over the reins of the athletic department from longtime leader Tom Shirley. After several months on the job as Assistant Vice President of Athletics, Goff spoke about his vision for the future of the Jefferson Rams, and suffice it to say the future is bright.
The opportunity to join an institution with Jefferson's strong national reputation was very exciting for me. I have both personal and professional connections with individuals who knew Jefferson well, and they spoke highly of its academic and athletic potential. As I went through the process of interviewing, meeting with student athletes, coaches, and campus leaders, I became even more excited about the possibilities here. Ultimately, I felt strongly this was going to be a great spot for my family and a great opportunity for me professionally, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the Jefferson community and excited to contribute to the Rams' future success.
You have a baseline understanding of the difficulties of breaking through in a pro sports town and a D1 town when it comes to the Big Five. What do you see as growth opportunities here in your new role?
My goal is to work with our dedicated student athletes and coaches to take what's already good and elevate it to greatness. Jefferson has a unique opportunity to excel at the national level, and that potential sets us apart. The Division II landscape doesn't have many institutions like Thomas Jefferson University, schools that combine strong academic reputation, high national and regional rankings, and athletic opportunity of excellence. We're operating in an elite environment, and we can leverage that to help our student athletes accomplish things that have never been achieved here before. This is a pro sports town. Are we going to compete with the fanfare surrounding the Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, Phillies? Probably not, but we can be intentional and strategic about our goals. Part of that means returning to the values and initiatives that have made Jefferson special in the past. We're going to focus on two key areas: success and community engagement. Success on the court and the gym and on the field naturally drives support. Students and local community members are much more likely to show up when they see a winning program. But we also need to take our student athletes out into the community, whether it's on campus or in the East Falls and greater Philadelphia area, by re-emphasizing initiatives like visiting local elementary schools for reading programs, hosting youth teams for halftime competitions. We can build meaningful connections with those communities. Additionally, partnering with Student Government Association and other organizations and offices on campus will help us expand our reach and strengthen these community engagement efforts. When we engage with the community, they return the favor by supporting us. Re-energizing those relationships will help us reconnect with what makes Jefferson athletics special.
Goff sees the value in having local youths meet and get to know Jefferson Rams of all sporting pursuits.
Whether it's a student athlete like Nikki Dettis from Thomas Jefferson University or a pro sports icon like Jason Kelsey, to young children, they're the same. Role models they can look up to, individuals doing great things in our community. That impact is powerful. These young kids are starstruck, and the inspiration often drives them to follow up by coming to our games, build relationships, and they'll come and support us. By engaging with the community in this way, we're not only highlighting the incredible work of our student athletes are doing, but we're also giving back and helping inspire the next generation of Jefferson Rams. When those children visit our campus to watch a game or attend a camp, who knows? They may decide to come to Jefferson and someday be a student athlete here themselves. We need to reposition ourselves in the local community, taking advantage of everything the Jefferson enterprise has to offer. Our goal is clear: to provide opportunities for our students to pursue excellence in everything they do. Whether it's in the classroom, on the court, the field, or out in the community, we want them to succeed across the board and do great things that make all of Jefferson proud.
You'd mentioned success draws attention. Basketball is what we're best known for. How do you expand that attention-garnering aspect away from the court and onto all our other sports?
Yeah, it starts by trying not to compare sports directly. The key is creating opportunities for all student athletes to feel supported. That means ensuring the campus community is aware of events and that we're sharing attention equitably, whether through social media or other more traditional marketing platforms. But at the same time, we need to have realistic goals and expectations. These conversations are different depending on the sport and the venue, and we need to measure success differently when it comes to evaluating crowd size and engagement from the community. Certain sports naturally lend themselves to drawing larger crowds, and that's even true at the professional level. We try to ensure we're promoting, celebrating, and highlighting the experiences of all of our student athletes, regardless of sport. Student athlete deserves to feel valued and supported.
That mindset would translate into garnering Jefferson students' interest as well?
Absolutely. To encourage student engagement, we need to think creatively and make participation easy, more exciting. At another institution, I worked with dining services to turn a routine meal into a special event by closing the dining hall for the morning and hosting a picnic at a baseball game. This brought the entire community together. We need to collaborate with student groups and other campus departments to create similar experiences that promote involvement and foster school spirit.
Where would you like to see Jefferson 5-10 years down the road?
I envision us competing at the highest level in Division II across the board, while continuing to excel academically and make meaningful impact in the community. My goal is to see every program not only build on its strengths, but also raise the bar so that excellence becomes the hallmark of everything that we do. There's no reason we can't achieve success at the highest level in all areas. From my assessment, after 90 days on campus, it's clear we have the potential to meet these goals. One of the things that attracted me to this role has been reaffirmed: the combination of outstanding people, a supportive environment, and a strong sense of community. While we benefit from being a part of the larger Jefferson enterprise, we have all the advantages of a close-knit small college community. With everyone on board, I'm excited for the future. We're in a special position to offer some of the best student athletes in the country the opportunity to compete at the scholarship level in Division II, while pursuing an academic experience that's truly distinctive. Very few Division II athletic directors can say that, and it's something I find very exciting. I want to lean into that identity, celebrate it, and channel our energy into creating the best possible experience for our student athletes. For me, it all comes back to the student-athlete experience. Success in athletics can be measured in different ways, and while some shy away from emphasizing competitive success, I'm unapologetic about its importance. Competing at a championship level enhances the overall experience. Winning makes everything more rewarding. That said, success in athletics must align with our mission and values. At Jefferson, we can achieve both. We can uphold strong core values, maintain an academic focus of the highest caliber, and still reach new heights in athletic success. It's not an either or. We can and should pursue excellence in every area.
Let's now shift our attention to the College of Rehabilitation Sciences, where research and work is being done that could ultimately benefit not only Rams athletes, but professionals, other collegiate competitors, and even those in youth programs locally and internationally. Specifically, this mission centers on arms, even more specifically, pitching arms. And anyone from youths to Phillies fan will immediately recognize the importance of what you are about to hear.
My name is Stephen Thomas, professor and department chair for exercise science. I've been at Jefferson since 2020. I played baseball my whole life. I love the sport. And when we started to learn about the shoulder and the elbow and all the overuse injuries that happen, I just gravitated to that. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to dig deeper. So when I moved on to my master's and we have to do research, it was pretty obvious I'm going to do it on the shoulder. It was such a cool thing to me to ask a question that nobody really had an answer to, and then conduct a study and get an answer to it and feed that back into science and how clinicians treat or assess athletes. I went on to get my PhD in biomechanics and movement science, so I got a little more into the technical side of evaluating how people move and function, and then I did a postdoc in bioengineering. A little more technical, went to the engineering side. We did a lot of rat model, rotator cuff adaptations. That combined with my clinical research to really change a slight direction. This kind of focused me into, let's try to assess more tissue changes. That's where a lot of my research has focused on ultrasound and using diagnostic ultrasound to image these tissues and put structural characteristics around them so that we could try to help understand how tissues are adapting either in a positive way or a negative way and identify these athletes that may be at risk before they become symptomatic.
In an overarching sense, can you explain the nature of your work here at Jefferson over the past couple of years?
With baseball, pitchers are the most vulnerable to injuries. If you're a fan, You've seen that definitely in the past 10 years. The uptick of Tommy John surgeries and shoulder injuries and guys just being out is tremendous. What we try to do in our research is essentially try to prevent those things. With these guys throwing as much as they do, as hard as they do consistently, your tissues will adapt. So everything adapts to stress. Throwing a baseball is a high stress environment for several of your tissues in your shoulder, several of your tissues in your elbow. Essentially, we're trying to understand those adaptations and what variables will control those adaptations. We're really at the early stages. The benefit of a pitcher is that one arm throws, the other arm doesn't. So we have a genetic twin essentially that we could compare to and try to see how do these tissues change just in a snapshot from the side that doesn't throw to the side that throws. Once we identify what's normal in a thrower, then the throwers that end up getting hurt, what do their tissues look like? Is there something that we could identify structurally that's changing that tells us, hey, they're at risk? We're not at that point yet, but can I put the ultrasound probe on them, measure certain characteristics of the structure of that tissue and say, you're in the red zone. We need to back you off. We need to put you on a 10-day DL. Let the tissues catch back up, recover, so that you're more back to your true baseline or the baseline of somebody that isn't injured.
To help an untrained in this field mind like mine better understand the effort conceptually, Thomas drew a more accessible analogy.
If you're a weight trainer, you injure tissue at a microscopic level, you wait a period of time to train that muscle again, it recovers, you do it again, and you get hypertrophy of your muscle and you grow. And muscle is a little easier because it has a lot of blood flow. The tissues that we're dealing with are tendons and ligaments. They don't have as much blood flow. And the symptoms that when you say, hey, I feel good, put me back into pitch, they're muscle-based. They're like, oh, I was sore after I pitched, my muscles were sore, but you're not experiencing that feeling with your tendons and ligaments. So your muscles might be recovered, but your tendons and ligaments are lagging behind. Essentially, what we're attempting to do is get very specific and image these tissues and try to get an understanding of, are they adapting in the good way of a weightlifter getting bigger muscles, allowing enough recovery? Because as long as we control the recovery of the pitcher, we have a better opportunity to, even if they went out and they threw 150 pitches that day, we just give them more recovery and they'll be okay. Trying to know where that good window is from a recovery standpoint, and it's going to be very individual.
You mentioned it's in the beginning stages. If you could bust out a crystal ball, where would you like this work to lead?
It may not be in my career, it may not be in my lifetime, but I hope that at one point we could have ultrasound devices that have these kind of measurement characteristics already built into them, because that's one of the limitations right now is that you have to have significant training to be able to image this, measure it. Sometimes it requires very specific software that we created. It doesn't live in the ultrasound machine. We've created these things and these measurements to do the research, but the first step is the feasibility. So getting it into these ultrasound units so that any clinician with a certain level of skill set within ultrasound could scan it, identify the tissue, and then it measures it and gives them a value. Then determining which tissues, which variables, what's the range, especially from an individual standpoint, that is going to be their norm or baseline or indicate that that tissue isn't recovered. If we get these kind of baseline values for individuals and we scan them and we know their baseline and then they pitch, okay, we measure them the day after they pitch. Yep, they dip down below baseline. They don't have to pitch for 4 more days, so it's good. And we keep scanning them every day. And let's say their start's going to be coming up and they're still 20% below baseline. I don't feel comfortable with that. I could go to the front office and say, look, our data is indicating they're not ready to come back yet. They threw a lot in that last outing. I think they need an extra day, and change the starting rotation or the schedule based on that.
This sounds like it could have major implications for the big leagues that would necessitate some changes to long-established practices.
Major League Baseball would have to change rules to allow a little more flexibility in this, allowing more than a 26-man roster. Maybe it's a 28 or a 30-man roster so that you have more starting pitchers in your rotation, that it's not a consistent 5-day rotation for starters. Maybe certain pitchers are on a 7-day cycle. Some pitchers are on a 4-day cycle. It's really going to be an individual basis. Within the confines of a roster, right now, you don't have enough flexibility to do that. It's partnering with Major League Baseball, changing some of these rules to help mitigate these injuries, but also us getting this science and this research to that level where we could keep scanning people every day and know when they're back up to their baseline, their tissue's fully recovered. It doesn't matter if they're telling you if they're sore or not. They're going to tell you they feel good 2 days after they pitch, probably. It's really using the tissue and the data to indicate a full recovery. I think it has the opportunity to significantly lower catastrophic injuries like Tommy John, UCL tears, big rotator cuff, labral injuries in the shoulder, things like that. Some of these injuries will still happen. It's impossible to prevent all injuries. Lowering the rate of injuries, especially for these, it just keeps climbing and climbing. So that's the challenge.
How can that benefit professional players and also benefit young pitchers working their way up to that level?
The benefit is really being ahead of the game, taking a more preventative stance. Again, even if a guy goes on a 10-day DL, it costs that organization financially a lot of money, but it also has the potential to cost them winning a World Series or not, especially as you get into that home stretch when some of these things happen and pitchers start to wear out and break down. For younger athletes, it takes even longer to get to, say, a little league level or a high school level. And that has to do with the medical professionals, right? Or the lack of. So at a little league level, there's no athletic trainers around, unfortunately. There's nobody to direct them on doing these things. The most guidance they have is from the coaches. These kids play in multiple leagues and they could throw in one league and then turn around the next day and throw it in another league because the leagues don't talk to each other. And travel ball is completely out of control now. The hope is that, again, the same thing, that ATs do start to move into some of these areas and they require athletic trainers to be employed at these levels. There's only 2 states in the country that do. Texas and New Jersey require you to have an athletic trainer employed. The hope is that we start getting more and more guys that are entering the MLB without Tommy John surgeries already, or having multiple Tommy John surgeries. The norm anymore is they've already had the surgery by the time they get drafted. But it does factor into draft decisions and trades and all of that.
You'd mentioned you were a baseball fan and that kind of helped guide you into this area. Do you watch the game differently as a result of all of this?
When I'm watching the pitcher, I'm picking up on pitching mechanics. I'm seeing how things change. And there are times that I do pick things up just watching it on the TV that, don't look right. If somebody gets hurt, I'm assessing and analyzing what potentially could have happened. You do view it a little bit differently, but I'm still watching it as a fan. I think it even heightens it because I'm a part of the team in a sense too. And it's exciting to see them do well.
From the future of pitching arms, we move along to a project that brought the Health Design Lab, Sidney Kimmel Medical College, and Jefferson Health's Department of Urology together that could revolutionize the use of virtual kidneys. In short, the team is publishing findings from an effort launched in pursuit of creating cost-effective 3D printed models for renal masses. It is a mission that aims to bolster patients' knowledge of their upcoming surgery and students' knowledge of the procedure, as well as help surgeons plan in advance for these cases. Let's meet those leading this important charge.
My name is Costas Lawless. I am a professor of urology at Thomas Jefferson University. My main focus of my practice is surgical and it's cancer. And one of the operations that I do quite commonly is treating kidney cancer with a partial nephrectomy, which essentially means that we're removing part of the kidney, or a radical nephrectomy. When it has to do with cancer, you're typically removing the part of the kidney that actually has cancer in it.
In that effort, Dr. Lawless teamed up with Rob Puglisi, director and co-founder of the Health Design Lab and director of the Scholarly Inquiry Design Track at Sidney Kimmel Medical College. There, future physicians are taught to think like designers and become more effective, creative problem solvers.
One of the things that we do in the Health Design Lab, along with teaching students from all different disciplines, as well as experts in and out of healthcare, is we make things. And we have a workshop with a number of different tools, but one of our most powerful tools are our suite of 3D printers. One of the most exciting ones are things that touch patient care. With these printers, we're able to print patient-specific models for a number of different uses, and we collaborate with a number of different specialties to do that.
Talk to me a bit about how the virtual kidneys came to be, and then in practice, their benefits to both caregivers and patients.
From my standpoint, the concept of a three-dimensional print of a kidney or a kidney mass, it was described in the literature, so we knew it was always out there, but we were always concerned about limitation in resources, the cost of actually taking something like that on. So we never really explored it. I had a student come up to me who's since graduated from Sidney Kimmel and said, hey, I'm interested in a scholarly inquiry project. We batted things around and I said, well, why don't we explore 3D printing? That student actually interfaced with the health design lab and with Rob's team. And that was the first time I met Rob. I still remember walking into 925 into the basement. It's an old bank. So we walked down into the vault and that's where the health design lab actually sits. It was eye-opening. These guys were coordinated. There was a lot of energy there. One of the first things that we had to define was a workflow. I could identify a patient and I had imaging, but how are we going to turn that imaging into a 3D print and have it ready for the actual procedure? Beyond that, what were we going to do with the actual model? This happened over a couple years.
Puglisi considers collaborations like these to be magical, particularly when they focus on improving the patient experience.
Somebody like Costas and his team are the clinical experts who understands their patients, understands their needs. We have us who are these technological experts trying to push the boundaries, not just of what the technology can do, but what a well-designed project and process looks like. The heart of all of these projects is our students. We've got such fantastic students at the medical college and across the university who never stop impressing me with what they can do in the time that they're here. Imagine if you can think about what is some of the most customized types of patient care out there, your mind probably goes to cancers because there's no such thing as two of the same cancer. They're always slightly different in different people and different sizes and different places. It's a really complex thing. The goal in situations like that is how can we provide more information in different ways to the people who are responsible for caring for such a complex population. 3D printers are really good for taking that one patient, one situation, and creating something physical out of them that provides new information in a new way to not just the care team, but also the thing that I really loved about the work that we've done is that we've also focused on the patient themselves and providing a new way to educate our patients and to make sure that they're fully informed about what they're about to undergo and what the care process will look like. Seeing the team in urology champion that perspective has been really fantastic. As amazing as some of these technological advancements are, the best part is when you can provide a level of confidence or a level of care that is really special for a patient and their family.
He discusses the route from a three-dimensional rendering to a 3D printed model.
Every patient-specific 3D print starts with medical imaging data. Think of a CAT scan, an MRI. There are some ultrasounds that also give you that three-dimensional data. We use technology called segmentation software that allows you to take those two-dimensional slices and turn it into a three-dimensional rendering. This is something that radiologists do for a lot of indications, and we work really closely with the Department of Radiology. And on these projects, we have a associate faculty member in the lab, Dr. Vishal Desai, who helps us from a radiology perspective make sure that we're doing all these things the right way. We take these imaging sets and we're able to essentially color in the parts of the anatomy that we want to show in 3D. They start as a virtual three-dimensional render, and then we can 3D print them. That segmentation process is a highly skilled process. In our case, we're able to train our medical students to do some of that first level segmentation before we send it over to the radiologist and the surgeon for validation. Not only are they really good at it as medical students, but it's also an excellent opportunity for them to apply their learning in anatomy directly in these cases. These examples of renal tumors, they're complicated. There's a lot of vessels, there's a urine collecting system, there's many layers to it. They would spend sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours to just do that segmentation.
This attention to detail is of the utmost importance to Dr. Lawless, because of the complexity not only of the organ, but also the individuality of tumors themselves.
Okay, I can see this on a screen or on conventional imaging or a radiology suite, but what would it be like if I actually could hold it in my hand and I could see really the relation of the tumor to the kidney and to the anatomy of the kidney? There are vessels, there's a collecting system, there's a ureter. On one side, there's a pancreas. On the other side, there's a spleen, there are adrenal glands. All of this anatomy figures into what my surgical planning is going to be. Our hypothesis was that sometimes, even though I'm trained to look at CT scans and MRIs, I wonder if my surgical planning would be altered with a 3D printed rendering or a 3D printed model of the actual kidney and the actual tumor and some of the surrounding anatomy. And the step beyond that, I wonder what the impact would be on trainees from an education standpoint. And then even a step beyond that, I wonder what the impact would be on the actual patient. Rob's team came up with surveys that we filled out to actually look at all these scenarios. We made it as easy as possible. You had a pre-model survey based on the imaging or based on the description that you were given, and then you had a post-model survey based on what your ideas were after actually seeing the model. I filled some out, my trainees filled them out, and the patients actually filled them out.
Puglisi explains that the survey tool was an integral part of this process since it gauged how the additional pre-surgery information impacted all the involved parties. There was also a concern about financial sustainability.
For our first study, we were looking specifically at 3D printed models. And then for the study that we just finished up, we were looking at what is the benefit of actually just stopping at that three-dimensional render and providing that as a piece of information. Let's say we took away the 3D print. At the end of the day, we do want to create processes that are sustainable so that theoretically we can develop a process that could be used for more and more patients. Yes, having a 3D model is really great. We showed benefit in every category, but the question is, what is that benefit? What's the difference between the two? That data is not out yet, but we're able to see, is there a difference in whether or not you 3D print it versus whether or not you're just looking at a virtual render.
How rare is this? Do you know of other places doing anything along these lines, or are we blazing a new trail?
This is not something that you do in your garage. Most of the urologists or urologic oncologists who I've talked to or I've seen presentations from or I've read articles about, they have a team like what we have at Jefferson that you assemble in order to actually produce something of quality. So you really have to go to an academic center. At Jefferson, we not only have the students, we have a lot of resources like the Health Design Lab where we could launch this. What we've done is intricate and what we've done is excellent, but there are some models out there which are even more so. Expense made a difference to us. One of my first questions was, how much does it cost? And he said, it depends on how complex you want to get. That's where the sustainability issue really comes into play. We didn't really want to do something that was going to be on a marquee somewhere. We wanted to do something that we can do over and over again. And our two studies that we've done actually had between 40 and 50 patients each. With the second project that Rob mentioned, that cost goes down even more.
Dr. Lallis discusses the tangible impacts this ongoing project has had on his work.
It made a difference. For me, there were a couple cases I was like, wow, that's not where I thought it was going to be. For my trainees, it was even more dramatic. I have to say, for a patient, especially when we were printing the models, we would go to them before the surgery. We'd put that model in their hand, and I call it the aha moment, and they would get what we were going to do. That makes a big difference because when your patients have expectations that are leveled with the renderings, it's going to make a huge difference. We did prove our hypothesis. Can they be a standard in trainee education as well as patient education? Absolutely. Can you expand it to other organs? I do mostly prostate, bladder, and kidney cancer. Although the kidney certainly lent itself to this project, the prostate's a solid organ and the bladder is an organ as well that has tumors on it. So you wonder if it can be expanded to more what I do and other tumor types. So lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, certainly other areas where if you're thinking of taking out just part of something, will through a three-dimensional model actually help you with surgical planning.
Puglisi has the sense that they are standing on the precipice of a major shift and benefit for patients.
The future of these technologies and their application in patient care is is going to be pretty unbelievable. When I talk about personalized medicine, that you can imagine your surgeon has practiced on a version of you multiple times right before actually doing the procedure on you. In a number of places, it's already happening. If you look at the world of customized 3D printed implants, which you're seeing become more used in certain spaces, such as head and neck reconstructive surgery, where you have these titanium plates and now sometimes plastic plates that are being 3D printed specifically for you, for your surgery. They fit you perfectly. They will go in quickly and are being shown now to have better outcomes than the standardized stuff that everybody is used to using. You're going to see more and more of these technologies expanding so rapidly that what I see for the future is going to be a place where patients in and out of the OR quicker, outcomes that are improved because surgeons are having to do less manipulations in the operating rooms, right? They're able to move quicker. Trainees are learning on these extremely advanced types of training models. Now you can literally 3D print things that aren't just the shape of an organ. They feel they're as soft like an organ. They have radiologic and ultrasound properties like an organ, can have fluid-filled elements. That's without even talking about the world of bioprinting, which we're just entering the world of being able to print with cells. It's a real reality that we're going to see bioprinted organs or bioprinted things being implanted into people commonly within our lifetimes. The technology is really exciting. It's really amazing. And what we're doing today is the foundation of what's to come in the future.
Let's check in with a first-of-its-kind college that opened its educational doors 15 years ago and, after being thrust into the public's consciousness because of a pandemic, continues to evolve with the times. Dr. Billy Oglesby is Dean of the College of Population Health. He spoke about what the future holds for the field.
Just in the short time since the college has been founded, there's been a pretty significant shift in what population health means, and really the transition from it being only a concept and a philosophy to now include a lot of tangible tools and methods and other evidence-based practices that payers, providers, and others in healthcare are now deploying to, again, improve access, equity, and outcomes.
The COVID-19 pandemic caught many in society off guard, but I would think it didn't come as large as a surprise to population health experts. Talk to me about the impact that Pop Health had on navigating that rough time.
I don't know that COVID was necessarily a surprise as much as it was a painful reminder of how the social determinants of health, of the social drivers of health, continue to be a source of so many health inequities. We saw that certainly early on in the epidemic, where there were subpopulations who were not only getting sick more often, but we're also dramatically more likely to die. When you're dealing with it in real time and you're seeing the data come across the dashboards, it was a reminder of what we've known in healthcare for a long time, and certainly one of the bedrock principles within population health, which is it's not only the clinical factors that drive sickness and death in the United States. It's also these social determinants, these social drivers, these health-related social needs. It's all of these non-clinical factors that continue to be the source of so much health inequity. COVID basically created a knowledge vacuum because there were a lot of things that frankly we didn't know. And that vacuum was filled by people who felt like they had the answer, and that resonated with people who needed an answer and were scared. Looking back, it didn't topple over our ability to respond and save lives. The way I think about it looking forward is knowing what did happen, using COVID as a case study. How can we better inform and better communicate with communities on what we know, what we don't know, and that the fact is that we are continually looking to find answers. And in the meantime, meantime, rely upon what we do know works.
How do you envision the next 15 years going if it's going to follow suit with the previous 15?
Going back to COVID, one of the ways in which healthcare shifted is adding a lot more telehealth because, frankly, it was out of necessity. People could not come in, or it was unsafe for them to come in and be seen. So it was dramatic increase in even using Zoom, not just web-based or telehealth specific platforms, but even using Zoom, Teams, and other types of commercially available video conferencing software to help enable patients to connect with their care team to get the things that they need, be able to connect with pharmacists to help fine-tune some of the medications that they're on. I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. It's done nothing actually except accelerate after COVID. One of the lessons learned is that not every doctor's office visit has to occur in person. There are a lot of things that can be done through telehealth. An analog to telehealth was using the same platform to deliver mental health care services. It's a dramatic increase in that, not just to make it more accessible, but now you can do it in a way that is less stigmatizing. It's hard to call it the wave of the future because it's already happening, but it certainly, I think, is going to accelerate.
Dr. Oglesby notes that while the telehealth shift does have some limitations, there are avenues for beneficial growth.
Not everything can be done through telehealth, but a lot of things can. And especially in the United States, where a lot of morbidity and mortality is driven by chronic disease, telehealth can be a really important avenue for getting patients connected not only to their care team, but other resources that they need, whether it's support systems for healthy eating or other types of behavior change. Telehealth can enable the kind of connectivity that is needed to accelerate people's care path and their journey. As those apps continue to provide more access to healthcare, I think what you're going to start seeing more of is how the healthcare service delivery system itself is going to shift to become increasingly consumer driven. There's significant shift that we all see in more technology fused healthcare delivery, which I think then is going to drive a greater consumer focus on how all of the healthcare services should be delivered. You're going to have a much more consumer-driven healthcare delivery model than what we had previously, which really wasn't consumer-driven, it was provider-driven.
Talk to me about the growing role of AI in analyzing healthcare data.
This is a huge area that we deal with in the college for a number of reasons. Number one, because it's a new novel technology that is growing, and we spend time teaching as well as conducting research on how AI, machine learning, deep learning, how those models can be used to analyze tons of healthcare data that exist, but do it in a novel way, perhaps in a more efficient way to arrive at answers faster. I've been fascinated by what I've seen in the generative AI space. As it relates to healthcare, it's important to know that a lot of those models are not at a point where it is providing reliably accurate information. A lot of this has to do with how these models are developed, the sources of information that these models are trained upon. One of the things that we're going to have to fix within the deployment of AI in healthcare is addressing incorrect information. The goal of generative AI is to provide an answer. The models are built to look at information that's being made available to it and then come up with an answer. But what if you're asking it a question that there is actually only a small amount of underlying information that the AI model has access to? It will come up with an answer, but it probably will be, not only is it incorrect, it'll probably be very off the wall. When it gives you the answer, there's no sort of way of knowing if that information is actually correct. There are a lot of other AI and machine learning, deep learning, other types of models that don't take that approach. If it doesn't know the answer, then it tells you, I don't know the answer. Experimenting with some of these where I've asked it off the wall questions, or I've asked it questions based on extremely rare diseases where the frequency of the publications is very small and limited. It will respond back to you and say, I don't have enough information. Those are the kinds of models that you're going to see a lot more in healthcare. It's just one of several exciting things that the college is involved. We've got a degree program that you can get a specialization in AI and deep learning as it relates to healthcare data. So it's really exciting.
Is there anything else I haven't asked about the future of pop health that has you excited?
Our first 10 years of the college was focused very heavily on our educational mission. A lot of our programs were the first ones in the field, like our healthcare quality and safety program, certainly our population health program, our operational excellence and healthcare program. Now there are dozens of programs in these areas. But over the last 5 years, we've been significantly expanding our faculty and focusing a lot more on our research missions. We've got more PhD researchers as well as clinical scientists that are a part of the faculty. We have more C-suite leaders within healthcare. That's not only going to help accelerate our research program, but it also provides a lot more mentoring opportunities for our students and alumni. There is a growing need for our college not only to provide the latest and greatest, best in the field knowledge and skills in the specific areas of population health and healthcare transformation, but to also be a partner in those research efforts to help fine-tune AI models, as well as some of the other research that we do around health equity, health economics, health policy, etc.
To learn more about this and other Jefferson stories, please visit jefferson.edu/news. Today's interviews were conducted by Brian Hickey with production support from Dan Bernstein. Thank you for listening.